Nintendeen and other YouTubers like him should be in prison. Over the past couple of days, we have seen a number of individuals, such as Demish and Nintendeen, release statements about how they're totally going to play Pokemon Fire Red on their emulators as opposed to actually buying the game legally through the Nintendo eShop. Their claim is that this is perfectly normal, that this is rational, and that like everyone should do it. Everyone. So essentially, what these people are doing is that they are openly advocating for piracy, because of course not everybody has a copy of Pokemon Fire Red on their hard drive. You're gonna have to get a hold of it somehow, and you're certainly not gonna buy a physical copy secondhand because those things are stupidly overpriced, and you're better off just buying the actual re-release. No, so in order to like save the $20 and get the game on an emulator, you're going to have to illegally download it over the internet. So Nintendeen and Demish are straight up advocating for criminal behavior from their audience. And right now we're kind of seeing like their audience kind of cheering the idea on, like, yeah, fuck Nintendo. I can't afford $20 because I'm a broke bum. Like, you have like a handful of people who are like celebrating this idea and like hyping it up, and we all know how this is going to end. Okay, this is the reality of the emulation situation, as I understand it, is that for a long time, low-level, nobody YouTubers were able to get away with infringing on Nintendo's brand. For a long time, they were able to get away with like actively promoting emulators and knockoff Chinese hardware and just illegally rip ROMs with like no real repercussions. When long-term, what we're seeing is just a complete and total collapse of that narrative. What we're seeing now is proof positive that owning a Nintendo Switch 2 and buying these games legally is less expensive than pirating them on an emulator, because you don't have to buy the periphery hardware. You don't have to go through the hoops of getting the game and installing it. You can just pay the $20 and it's there. Okay, it is far more affordable. It is far less time consuming. It is a better experience overall. I love how, by the way, like they specifically use the term like ROMs to describe Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Kind of exposing their mindset, because they don't describe them as games. They think of them as just something that you can download and pirate. And the simple reality is that is not true. That will never be true, and at a certain point, there will be serious repercussions for people who advocate for this kind of behavior. Like the entire meme out of the Western gaming space that there's nothing illegal about emulation. At a certain point, it is going to get cracked down on. And honestly, when it comes to the actual emulator developers and like the people who are like making real money off of this, like they're already getting cracked down on. There's a reason why these people exclusively focus on like older Nintendo games, stuff like this, stuff that's on like Nintendo Classics or, this re-release of an old Game Boy Advance game, because they can't. Oh, first of all, like Nintendo Switch 2 games can't be emulated. There are no emulators for Switch 2. Like, it hasn't even been cracked yet. And, the Switch 1 emulators are getting taken down. But when it comes to, like, these older emulators that have existed since, like, the mid-2000s, they still exist and they can still technically play games. And people can exploit that. But the reality is, it's simply cheaper and easier to buy the game legally. Like, the only reason that anybody is hyping up these knockoff inferior products is out of a desperate attempt to like one-up Nintendo, out of a desperate attempt to gaslight people into thinking there's some like alternative way to play Nintendo games. And the simple fact of the matter is that it isn't true. The simple fact of the matter is there is no benefit to emulating Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green over simply buying it legally. Outside of simply illegally downloading it for free, which is illegal, they are the same exact games. There are no benefits, and the end result of this is just the inevitable reality of what's going to settle in is that, this week, Nintendo's going to announce Pokemon Gen 10 on Pokemon Day, a game that will be launching on Nintendo Switch 1 and Switch 2. And like every other major Pokemon release, those games are going to see like major crackdowns on people who try and pirate and play them. I remember back even during like Pokemon X and Y or Sun and Moon. It was a while ago. People tried to pirate the game, and what happened? They bricked their games and prevented them from accessing like online features. Bricked the consoles. They can do that now. Like again, like they do have the legal right to brick people's consoles if they're pirating games on them, and that's the future of piracy and emulation. People are sitting there and seething about it. They're upset about it, but the reality is Nintendo is taking measures to make piracy as inconvenient as possible. And when something is inconvenient, you should be buying it completely legally. And I think that's kind of my mindset looking at this situation, because there's this really dumb quote from Gabe that's attributed to Gabe Newell about how like piracy is a service problem. I think it's safe to say that that simply isn't true, like at all. Like Gabe Newell, his entire business model revolves around selling like old games at discounted prices to try and keep his irrelevant like storefront relevant. But when it comes to Nintendo products, like we're told all the time that like to pirate Nintendo games, to steal Nintendo games, that you can't give Nintendo money, that $20 is way too much to ask for a Game Boy Advance game. It's retarded. It is it's downright ridiculous, and really is something that I do think the community should be pushing back against more. You're not a bootlicker for pointing this out. You're not irresponsible. You're not like a shill. You're not someone who's like disrespecting the cause, man. Like $20 is a perfectly reasonable price to ask for a classic Game Boy Advance game. Like I'll be going more into this like in other videos today, but I do think that's like the major takeaway I want to emphasize to start with is that Pokemon is bigger than your favorite thing. Pokemon is has maintained its relevancy and has continued to be this really popular, successful thing. And there's a reason why they sell it at a higher price point than lesser brands.